Welcome to part 2 of our interesting story. If you haven't watched the part 1, make sure to do so in order to understand how everything started. I will attach it at the end of this story. Subscribe if you haven't. Like, share, and comment. The glass doors closed behind Lily Parker with a quiet finality. Not loud, not dramatic, but heavy enough to follow her all the way outside. The city stretched in front of her, cars passing, people moving, life continuing like nothing had shifted. But something had. Inside her, her steps slowed as she reached the sidewalk, the cool evening air brushing against her face. For a moment, she just stood there, trying to breathe through the noise in her head. Victoria's voice didn't fade. It repeated, clear, controlled, unshaken. You weren't the first. Lily swallowed. Her fingers tightened slightly around the strap of her bag. Not the first. The words didn't just confuse her. They unsettled something deeper. Something that refused to stay quiet. Because if she wasn't the first, then what was she? Her mind moved faster now, replaying everything, every moment, every look, every conversation. Joel, standing quietly across the street, watching, returning every day, eating without asking questions, trusting her too easily. Her chest tightened. No, she murmured under her breath, almost instinctively. But the thought didn't leave. It stayed. Because now, it didn't feel impossible. Was Joel part of it? The question landed harder than she expected. She shook her head slightly, taking a slow step forward. No, he's just a kid, she whispered. But even as she said it, doubt followed. Not about Joel, but about everything around him. Her pace picked up as she moved down the street, her thoughts refusing to slow down. Brandon Scott, calm, controlled, always one step ahead. He knew things before she said them, showed up exactly when he needed to, watched more than he spoke. Her breath caught slightly. How much of that was real? And how much of it was planned? She stopped at the corner, the traffic light casting a soft glow across the pavement. For the first time since she met him, she didn't feel grounded in what she knew. She felt positioned, like every step she had taken had already been expected, anticipated, measured. Her jaw tightened. That wasn't real, she said quietly. But even that didn't sound convincing anymore, because some parts of it felt real, too real. Joel's laughter, the way he ran toward her without hesitation, the way he looked at her like she mattered. That wasn't calculated. That couldn't be. Lily exhaled slowly, pressing her lips together as she continued walking. She reached the bus stop without remembering how. Sat down, and for a moment, everything went quiet again. Not peaceful, just still, until the thoughts came back. Stronger this time. If it was a test, then what was the purpose? Kindness? Character? Or something else entirely? Her mind drifted back to the first day. The way Joel had stood there, clean, composed, out of place. Not desperate, not lost, just watching, waiting. Her stomach tightened. Had he been waiting for her? The possibility made her shift uncomfortably. Because that meant, from the very beginning, she hadn't stumbled into the situation. She had been part of it, whether she knew it or not. Lily leaned forward slightly, her elbows resting on her knees. This doesn't make sense, she muttered. But deep down, it was starting to, and that's what unsettled her the most. Because if it made sense, then it meant one thing. There was a system behind it, something structured, something intentional, and she had walked right into it. The sound of a bus approaching pulled her back to the present. But she didn't move, didn't stand, didn't even look up, because something else had caught her attention. A small detail, subtle, but wrong. Her eyes shifted slowly to the seat beside her. There, resting quietly against the metal bench, was an envelope, plain, unmarked, except for one thing. Her name, Lily Parker. Her breath stilled. For a second, she didn't move, didn't reach for it, just stared, because it didn't feel like coincidence. It felt placed, deliberately. Her hand moved slowly, almost cautiously, as she picked it up. It was light, sealed, waiting. Her fingers hesitated at the edge. Part of her didn't want to open it, because once she did, whatever uncertainty she was holding on to would disappear and be replaced with something real, something undeniable. She exhaled quietly. then opened it. Inside was a single folded paper. Nothing else. No signature. No explanation. Just words. Clean. Precise. Controlled. Her eyes scanned the first line and stopped. If you're reading this, you deserve the truth. Her heartbeat slowed, not from calm, but from focus, because whatever came next wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. It was part of something. Something she was now fully inside. Lily lifted her gaze slightly, the city moving around her like nothing had changed. But for her, everything had. And for the first time since she walked away, she wasn't just confused. She was aware. This wasn't over. Not even close. The paper didn't feel heavy in Lily Parker's hands, but the words on it did. She read the first line again. Asterisk, if you're reading this, you deserve the truth. Asterisk. Her eyes moved slowly across the page, every sentence tightening something inside her chest. There was no greeting, no apology, just information. Clean, direct, calculated. It didn't explain everything, but it explained enough. This wasn't random. It never was. Lily's grip on the paper tightened slightly as she kept reading. Asterisk, what you experienced was not an accident. It was an evaluation, a controlled environment designed to observe unfiltered human behavior, specifically acts of empathy under pressure. Asterisk, she blinked once, then again. Evaluation. The word echoed in her mind like it didn't belong in her world, but did now. Her breathing slowed, not from calm, but from concentration, because suddenly, everything was starting to connect. Joel showing up at the same time, every day, standing in the same place, watching, not asking, not demanding, just waiting. Her stomach turned slightly. Asterisk, subjects are not informed in advance. Authenticity depends on absence of awareness. Asterisk, Lily exhaled sharply, lowering the paper just enough to stare ahead. Subjects, that's what she had been. Not a person, not someone making choices in her own life. A subject, observed, measured, judged. Her jaw tightened. No, she murmured, almost instinctively. But the words were already inside her, already real. Her eyes dropped back to the page. Asterisk, your interactions were monitored from the initial point of contact. Behavioral consistency, emotional response, and ethical decision-making were recorded over time. Asterisk, her chest tightened again. From the beginning. That meant, from the very first moment she saw Joel standing across the street. She hadn't been alone. Someone had been watching. The realization didn't come with panic. It came with something quieter, something colder. Awareness. Lily leaned back slightly against the bus stop bench, her mind racing through every detail she had missed. The black car, always parked at a distance. Engine running. Windows dark. She thought it was just someone waiting. But now, it felt different. Intentional. Structured. Her fingers brushed the edge of the paper again as she continued reading. Asterisk. This initiative was developed to identify individuals capable of sustained compassion without expectation of return. Asterisk. Her lips pressed together. Compassion. That's what this was about. That's what all of this had been reduced to. She shook her head slightly. No, it's more than that, she whispered. Because if it was only about kindness, then why the secrecy? Why the control? Why the layers? Her eyes scanned the next lines more carefully, looking for something deeper. And then, she found it. Asterisk. Most participants fail within the first interaction. Some show temporary empathy, but withdraw under social or financial pressure. Very few maintain consistency. Asterisk. A pause. Her heart slowed. Then, asterisk, you did. Asterisk. The words didn't feel like praise. They felt like confirmation. Measured. Recorded. Filed. Lily lowered the paper slightly again, her gaze drifting across the street. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same anymore. Because now, she knew. She hadn't been choosing freely. Not entirely. Her environment had been shaped, guided, tested. Her mind shifted back to Brandon Scott. The way he spoke, the way he watched, the way he seemed to understand things before they were said. It wasn't instinct. It was observation. He wasn't reacting to her. He was studying her. And somehow, that realization hurt more than anything Victoria had said, because it meant something simple. Something hard. She wasn't special because of who she was. She was selected because of what she did. Lily's eyes dropped back to the paper again, her fingers turning the page slightly, expecting more. But this part felt different, less clinical, more deliberate. Asterisk, this was never just about generosity. It was about decision-making under isolation, about who you are when no one is watching. Asterisk, her breath caught slightly. No one is watching. A faint, almost bitter thought crossed her mind. Except someone always was. She exhaled slowly, her shoulders rising and falling once. Then she kept reading, because she needed to know, needed to understand how far this really went. Asterisk, the program was designed to identify individuals capable of operating beyond self-interest. Individuals who cannot be influenced by wealth, pressure, or recognition. Asterisk, Lily's brow furrowed slightly. Operating? That word didn't belong in a test about kindness. It belonged somewhere else, somewhere bigger. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she reached the final section, the part that wasn't explained, just stated. Asterisk, selected individuals may be considered for further evaluation. Asterisk, her grip tightened again. Further evaluation. So this wasn't over. Not even close. She wasn't just tested. She was progressing. The thought sent a quiet chill through her, because it meant one thing. This wasn't about a moment. It was about a system, a process, and she was still inside it. Lily folded the paper slowly, her movements controlled but deliberate. Then she stopped, because something else caught her attention. At the bottom corner. Small, easy to miss, but not invisible. A printed line, different from the rest. Less like a statement, more like a label. Her eyes focused, reading it carefully. Once, then again. Candidate, Lily Parker. Her breath stilled. And just beneath it, status, incomplete. The word didn't just sit there. It lingered, unfinished, open, like a door that hadn't been closed yet. Lily stared at it for a long moment, the city noise fading into the background again. Because now, the question wasn't just what had happened. It was what came next. And more importantly, who was deciding that? Lily Parker didn't realize how long she had been sitting there. The paper was still in her hands. Folded now, but not forgotten. The words refused to leave her. Evaluation. Observation. Incomplete. They echoed in a loop that wouldn't settle. People passed by. Cars moved. The city kept breathing. But Lily felt paused, like she had stepped out of something real and into something carefully constructed. Her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the paper before she slipped it into her bag. Out of sight, not out of mind. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees, staring at the pavement, trying to ground herself, trying to separate what she felt from what she now knew. Because they weren't the same anymore. One was real, the other, engineered. Miss Lily, the voice was soft, familiar, too familiar. Her body reacted before her mind did. She froze, just for a second, then slowly. She looked up. Joel stood a few steps away from her. Still, calm, exactly the way he always had been. Same posture, same quiet presence. Like nothing had changed. But everything had. Lily's chest tightened. Not from fear, from something more complicated. Something that didn't have a clear name. Joel, she said, her voice quieter than she expected. He took a small step closer, his expression open, unguarded. There was no hesitation in his eyes. No guilt. No awareness of the storm sitting right in front of him. I've been looking for you, he said simply. Lily watched him carefully, studying him now in a way she hadn't before. Not as someone she cared about, but as someone she needed to understand. Why, she asked. The question came out sharper than intended. Joel blinked slightly, caught off guard. Not by the question itself, but by the tone behind it. I just wanted to see you, he replied. Simple, direct, no layers. At least, none that he showed. Lily exhaled slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. You knew where to find me, she said. It wasn't really a question. Joel nodded lightly. Yeah, I always know where you are around this time. Her stomach tightened. Always. That word sat differently now. Before, it felt like routine. Now, it felt like design. Lily leaned back slightly, crossing her arms. And how do you know that, Joel? He hesitated. Not long, but enough. I just do, he said. Not defensive, not evasive, just unsure how to explain something he didn't fully understand himself. Lily watched him in silence, looking for something, anything, a crack, a sign, but there wasn't one. What she saw instead was the same boy, the one who stood quietly at her truck, the one who smiled over something as simple as a sandwich, the one who never asked for more than she gave. And that made this harder, because if he was part of it, he didn't feel like it. Joel, she began, her voice softening despite herself. He stepped a little closer, not cautious, not afraid, just drawn. Are you okay? He asked. The question hit differently than it should have, because it wasn't calculated. It wasn't part of any test. It was real, and that's what made it complicated. Lily swallowed, looking away for a brief moment before meeting his eyes again. Did your dad tell you to come here? She asked. This time, there was no hesitation. Joel shook his head immediately. No. The answer came quickly, too quickly to feel rehearsed. I came because you left, he added. His voice lowered slightly. And you didn't say goodbye. The words landed quietly, but they carried weight. Lily's expression shifted, something softer breaking through the tension she had been holding. I didn't think I had to, she said. Joel frowned slightly. You always say goodbye. There was no accusation in his voice, just observation, consistency, the same kind she just read about. Lily felt something tighten in her chest again, because that's what this had been about, consistency. But this moment didn't feel like part of a test. It felt like something slipping through it, something untouched. She studied him again, more carefully this time. Joel, do you know what her dad was doing? She asked. The question hung between them. He looked at her, then down, then back up again. A small shake of his head. Not really, he admitted. I know he watches people sometimes. Lily's jaw tightened slightly. Watches people. The simplicity of how he said it made it sound harmless. But it wasn't. Did he tell you to talk to me? She asked. Joel hesitated again. But this time, it wasn't confusion. It was memory. A little, he said. Her breath slowed. Ow! Joel shifted slightly, his hands slipping into his pockets. He said, if I ever see someone who feels different, I should go say hi. Lily's brows pulled together slightly. Different? Joel nodded. Yeah, like someone who doesn't look at me like I'm weird for being alone. The words landed gently, but they carried truth. Not rehearsed, not shaped, just honest. Lily felt something soften again, against her will, because that wasn't manipulation. That was a child trying to explain something he didn't fully understand. So you chose me? She asked quietly. Joel shrugged slightly. I guess. A small pause. Then, you gave me food, he added. Simple, as if that explained everything. And maybe to him, it did. Lily let out a slow breath, her shoulders relaxing just slightly, because in that moment, she realized something. Joel wasn't the one controlling this. He was inside it too, just in a different way, a quieter way. And somehow, that made it harder to be angry. Her gaze softened as she looked at him. You shouldn't be out here alone, she said. The line came naturally, instinctively. Joel smiled a little. I'm not alone. She frowned slightly. What do you mean? He looked at her, then past her, then back again. My dad always knows where I am. The words sent a subtle chill through her. Not loud, not obvious, but present. Because now, that didn't sound comforting. It sounded like control. Lily's expression shifted again, something more serious settling in. Joel, she started, but he spoke first. Soft, almost thoughtful. My dad said you were different. He paused, just long enough for the words to settle, then finished. From everyone else. Lily didn't respond, didn't move, because in that moment, the line between truth and test blurred again, and she wasn't sure which side she was standing on anymore. Lily didn't say anything after Joel's words. She couldn't. My dad said you were different. The sentence stayed with her long after it was spoken. Not because it felt like praise, but because it felt like confirmation. Not of who she was, but of what she had become, inside something she never agreed to. Her eyes lifted slowly, and that's when she saw it. Across the street, parked like it had always been there. A black car, Engine running. Windows tinted. Still. Watching. Her chest tightened. Not from surprise. From recognition. Because now, she understood what she was looking at. Joel followed her gaze, turning slightly. "Oh," he said quietly. "He's here." Of course he was. Lily stood up. Slowly. Deliberately. Every movement controlled. Even as something restless built beneath the surface. "Stay here," she said to Joel. But he didn't move anyway. He just watched her. The same way he always had. Lily crossed the street, the sound of passing cars fading into the background. Each step felt heavier than the last. Not from fear, but from certainty. This time, she wasn't walking into confusion. She was walking into answers. The car door opened before she reached it. Smooth. Expected. Brandon Scott stepped out. Same posture. Same calm presence. Like nothing about this situation had shifted. Like this was just another moment he had already calculated. Lily stopped a few feet in front of him. Not too close. Not distant. Just enough space to make it clear. This wasn't the same dynamic anymore. "You knew I'd find this," she said, her voice steady. She pulled the folded paper from her bag, holding it at her side. Brandon's eyes moved briefly to it, then back to her. "I knew you'd want the truth," he replied. His tone didn't change, didn't soften, didn't harden. It stayed exactly where it always was. Measured. Lily let out a quiet breath. "That's not the same thing." A small pause. Then, "What is this?" she asked. No emotion in the words. Just clarity. Brandon studied her for a moment before answering. Not rushed. Not defensive. Just precise. "It's a system," he said. Lily's jaw tightened slightly. "I figured that part out." His expression didn't shift. "It's a method," he continued, as if her reaction hadn't interrupted him. "A way to observe people without influence. Without performance." Lily stepped closer. Just slightly. "So you lie to them?" "No," Brandon replied calmly. "I remove the conditions that make people lie." Her brows pulled together. "That's not better." "No," he said. "It's more honest." The answer landed harder than she expected, because it didn't feel like justification. It felt like belief, and that made it more dangerous. Lily crossed her arms, holding his gaze. "You had your son out there," she said. "Every day." His eyes flickered briefly toward Joel in the distance. Then back to her. "Yes." No hesitation. No apology. "Do you even hear how that sounds?" she asked. Brandon's expression remained composed. "I do, and you're okay with it?" A pause. Not long, but enough to mean something. "I trust him," Brandon said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Lily shook her head slightly. "That's not trust. That's control." For the first time, something shifted. Not visibly, not dramatically, but there was a pause in him, a fraction longer than before. Then, "It started as protection," he said. Lily's expression didn't change. "From what?" Brandon exhaled quietly, his gaze drifting for just a second, like he was choosing how much to say. "From people who see opportunity before they see humanity." The words were calm, but there was something under them. Something older. Something learned. "I've seen what happens when money enters a room before character," he continued. "People adjust. They perform. They become what they think you want." Lily listened, not because she agreed, but because she needed to understand. "So you created a situation where they don't know who you are," she said. "Yes." "And you watch them." "Yes." "And you decide who they are based on that." Another pause. Then, "I observe patterns," he corrected. Lily let out a quiet, almost disbelieving breath. "Patterns," she repeated. Like that made it less personal, less invasive. "But you decided who I was," she added. Brandon met her eyes directly. "No," he said. "You showed me." The words landed differently. Not dismissive, not dismissing her, but placing responsibility back in her hands. And somehow, that made it harder to argue. Because part of her knew. She had chosen every action, every moment. But now, those choices felt exposed, evaluated, filed away. Lily's voice lowered slightly. "And what happens after you observe patterns?" she asked. Brandon didn't answer immediately. This time, the pause was intentional. He stepped slightly closer, closing some of the distance between them. "Some people are exactly who they appear to be," he said. "And others?" Lily pressed. His gaze held hers. "They're not consistent. The word echoed in her mind. Consistency. It was everywhere. In the paper, in Joel's words, in this entire situation. And me? She asked. There it was. The question that mattered. Brandon didn't look away. You didn't change, he said. No hesitation. No doubt. Lily's breath caught slightly. Not from pride. From pressure. Because that answer came with expectation. With consequence. And that's why I'm still here, she asked. Brandon's expression shifted again. Subtly. Barely noticeable. But real. Yes, he said. A quiet beat passed between them. Then Lily's voice sharpened slightly. So what now? Another test. Brandon shook his head slowly. No. Then what is it? She pressed. Another pause. But this one felt different. He wasn't calculating. He wasn't controlling. He was choosing. And when he spoke, his voice carried something it hadn't before. Something less structured. Less rehearsed. Somewhere along the way, he began. Lily didn't move. Didn't interrupt. Because something about his tone told her. This mattered. He held her gaze. Steady. Unfiltered. It stopped being a test. The words didn't move. They stayed exactly where Brandon Scott had left them. It stopped being a test. Lily Parker held his gaze, searching for something behind the sentence. An explanation, a reason, anything that made it make sense. But he didn't add anything else. He just stood there, calm, certain, like that alone should be enough. It wasn't. Lily let out a slow breath, her arms still crossed, her posture steady. But inside, something had shifted again. Because if it wasn't a test anymore, then what was it? Her mouth opened slightly, but the sound of heels against pavement cut through the moment. Sharp, deliberate, unmistakable. Both of them turned. Victoria approached without hesitation. Same composure, same controlled presence. But this time, there was no distance, no observation from the sidelines. She stepped directly into the space between them. Close enough to interrupt. Close enough to change everything. I was wondering how long it would take, she said, her voice even. Lily's expression hardened slightly. You knew about this, she said. Not a question. Victoria didn't deny it. I knew enough, she replied. Brandon's jaw tightened just slightly. Now isn't the time, he said quietly. Victoria didn't look at him. Her attention stayed on Lily. That depends, she said, on whether she deserves the full truth. The word deserves landed with weight. Measured. Intentional. Lily's eyes narrowed slightly. I'm right here, she said. Victoria gave a small nod. I know. A brief pause. Then, she continued. This was never just about kindness. Lily didn't move. Didn't react outwardly. But internally, something locked into place. Because she already knew that. She just didn't know how far it went. Victoria stepped slightly closer, lowering her voice, not out of secrecy, but precision. Brandon doesn't test people for no reason, she said. He builds systems. Lily glanced briefly at Brandon, then back. And this one, she asked. Victoria's expression didn't change. This one is different. A beat passed. Then, he's not just observing behavior anymore, she continued. He's selecting people. The word hit harder than anything else. Selecting. Not watching. Not studying. Choosing. Lily felt the shift instantly. A subtle tightening in her chest. Because that word changed everything. Selecting them for what? She asked. Victoria held her gaze. For something that lasts. Too vague. Too controlled. Lily shook her head slightly. No, she said. Say it clearly. Victoria studied her for a moment. Then, she did. He's building something that outlives him. The sentence hung in the air. Not dramatic. Not loud. But heavy enough to settle into every part of the moment. Lily's brows pulled together slightly. A business? She asked. Victoria shook her head once. No. A pause. Then, a foundation. Lily blinked. A charity? She asked. But even as she said it, she knew that wasn't the right word. Victoria's lips pressed together slightly. Not exactly. Another pause. Then, a system of influence. Built on people he can trust. People who don't change when money is involved. Lily's breath slowed. Because now, it made sense. Not in a comforting way, but in a complete one. This wasn't about generosity. It wasn't about a moment of kindness. It was about long-term control. about building something structured, something intentional, something powerful. And suddenly, her role in it felt different. Not accidental, not incidental, planned. She looked at Brandon again. This time, not searching for answers, but seeing him clearly. You're building a network, she said. He didn't respond, didn't confirm, but he didn't deny it either. And that silence was enough. Lily exhaled slowly, her mind moving quickly now, connecting everything. The observation, the consistency, the evaluation. It all led here. But why me? She asked. The question came out quieter this time. Not defensive, just honest. Victoria answered. Because you didn't change. The same word again. Consistency. But this time, it carried weight. Not as an observation, as a qualification. Lily's gaze dropped briefly to the ground before lifting again. So what happens now? She asked. Victoria didn't hesitate. That depends on him. Her eyes shifted slightly toward Brandon, then back. And on you. The air between them tightened. Because now, there was no confusion left. Only choice. Lily's voice lowered. You've been watching me this whole time, she said. Victoria nodded slightly. Yes. And you decided I was what? Lily pressed. Victoria's answer came clean. Suitable. The word didn't feel like a compliment. It felt like classification, like she had been placed somewhere. Defined. Contained. Lily let out a quiet breath, shaking her head slightly. I didn't agree to any of this. Brandon spoke this time. You didn't need to. Her eyes snapped back to him. That's exactly the problem. A brief silence followed. Not tense. Not chaotic. Just full. Because everything had been said. Everything was out. And yet, one thing still hadn't been answered. The most important thing. Lily looked between them, her voice steady. So what are you offering me? Victoria didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because this time, Brandon did. He stepped forward slightly, not closing the distance completely, but enough to shift the dynamic again. Opportunity, he said. The words sounded simple. Too simple. Lily's expression didn't change. That's vague. He nodded once, then corrected himself. A role. Still not enough. She held his gaze. In what? Another pause. Then, in something that matters. Lily exhaled quietly. Because now, she understood the shape of it, even if she didn't know the details. And that understanding brought something else with it. Pressure. Expectation. Weight. Because this wasn't just an offer. It was a direction. A path. A life. Victoria stepped slightly closer, her voice calm but firm. He's not offering you a job, Lily. A beat passed. Then she finished. He's offering you a life. Lily didn't respond right away. The words still hung in the air. He's offering you a life. They sounded heavier the longer they stayed there. Not because they were unclear, but because they were too clear. A life. Not help. Not a favor. Not even opportunity in the simple sense. Something permanent. Something defining. Lily's eyes moved from Victoria to Brandon. He hadn't stepped closer again. Hadn't added anything. He just stood there, waiting. Not impatient. Not persuasive. Just still. And somehow, that made it harder. Because there was no pressure. No urgency. No attempt to convince her. The choice was entirely hers. And that meant, whatever she decided, she would have to carry it. Lily exhaled slowly, her gaze drifting past them for a moment. The city stretched around her again. Cars moving, voices blending, life continuing in a way that felt strangely distant now. Because hers had paused, split into two directions. One she understood, and one she didn't. Her fingers tightened slightly at her sides. I didn't ask for this, she said quietly. Brandon nodded once. I know. No argument. No defense. Just acknowledgement. Lily looked back at him, her expression steady. So why me? She asked again. Not because she hadn't heard the answer, but because she needed to hear it differently, needed to understand what it meant beyond observation. Brandon held her gaze. Because you didn't need a reason to care, he said. The answer came softer this time, less structured, more personal. Lily's jaw tightened slightly. That's not a qualification, she replied. It is, he said calmly. In a world where most people need one. The words didn't feel like praise. They felt like weight, like something being placed on her shoulders. Defined, assigned. She shook her head slightly, taking a small step back. "You're turning something simple into something complicated," she said. "No," Brandon replied. "I'm recognizing that it already is." Silence followed. Not empty, just full, because both of them believed what they were saying, and neither of them was wrong. That was the problem. Lily's gaze dropped for a moment, then lifted again. "So what happens if I say no?" she asked. Victoria answered this time. "Nothing." Lily looked at her. "Nothing." Victoria nodded. "You walk away. You go back to your life. And this ends." It sounded simple, clean, contained. But Lily didn't miss what wasn't said. What couldn't be? Because even if she walked away, she wouldn't be the same. She couldn't be. Not after this. Not after knowing. Her eyes shifted slightly and landed on Joel. He was still across the street, standing exactly where she had left him, watching, not anxious, not confused, just present, the same way he had always been. And suddenly, everything felt quieter, because in the middle of all this complexity, he hadn't changed. Lily's expression softened just slightly. Then she looked back at Brandon. "You said it stopped being a test," she said. "Yes." "Then what is it now?" A pause. Not calculated, not controlled, just real. Brandon exhaled quietly. "It's a choice," he said. The words settled differently. Not imposed, not assigned, offered. Lily nodded slowly. A choice. That sounded simple, but it wasn't, because this wasn't just about saying yes or no. It was about who she would become after either answer. Her voice lowered. "If I say yes, what happens to me?" Brandon didn't answer immediately, and that hesitation said more than anything else, because for the first time, there wasn't a clear structure behind his response. No prepared explanation, just truth. "You step into something bigger than what you've known," he said. Not detailed, not defined, but honest. Lily let out a slow breath. "And if I say no?" This time, he answered without pause. "You stay exactly where you are." The words weren't meant to diminish, but they did. Not because her life was small, but because now she could see how much bigger it could be. And that contrast created tension. Inside her, her hands relaxed slightly at her sides, then tightened again, because the choice wasn't just about opportunity. It was about identity, who she had been, versus who she could become, and whether those two things could exist in the same space. Her eyes drifted back to Joel one more time. He gave a small wave, uncertain, but warm. The same boy, untouched by the structure around him. And that grounded her more than anything Brandon or Victoria had said, because he wasn't thinking about systems, or evaluations, or influence. He just knew one thing. She had been kind to him, without a reason, without expectation. And that was enough. Lily's chest rose slowly as she inhaled, then exhaled. Her shoulders straightened slightly, not rigid, just settled, decision forming, not rushed, not forced, but clear. She stepped forward, closing the space between her and Brandon. Her movement quiet, but deliberate. Victoria watched. Brandon didn't move, didn't interrupt. He just held her gaze, waiting. The moment stretched, long enough to matter, short enough to feel immediate. And then Lily spoke, not loudly, not dramatically, but with certainty, the kind that doesn't come from pressure, but from understanding. "I won't be part of something that turns people into numbers," she said. A small pause. Then she continued, "But I won't pretend I didn't see what you were trying to build either." Brandon's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. Recognition, not agreement, but respect. Lily took another small breath, then finished. "I'll decide what my life looks like." The words landed clean, final, but not complete, because something about the moment still felt open, like the decision she made wasn't the one they expected, and maybe not the one they were prepared for either. The room felt different now, not because anything had changed on the outside, but because Lily Parker had. She stood still in the center of Brandon Scott's glass-walled office, the city of New York stretching endlessly behind him like a silent audience. The same space that once felt overwhelming now no longer intimidated her. The money, the architecture, the power, it all looked the same. But it didn't feel the same anymore, because she had seen behind it. Joel sat quietly near the sofa, his legs swinging slightly above the floor. He wasn't scared. He wasn't confused anymore either. He just kept looking between Lily and Brandon, like he was waiting for something no adult had explained yet, but somehow he already understood mattered deeply. Brandon Scott didn't speak. He didn't rush her. For once, the man who controlled companies, people, and systems was simply waiting. And Lily, she was no longer the same woman who had walked into this world thinking kindness was simple. She took a slow breath. The silence stretched. Heavy. Alive. Then she spoke. "I won't take your offer." The words landed cleanly. No hesitation. No anger. Just certainty. Brandon's expression didn't change immediately, but something in his eyes tightened, subtle, restrained. Like he had expected every possible outcome except that one delivered with calm clarity. Joel shifted slightly on the sofa. Lily continued. "I know what this was. I know what you were trying to do. The test. The evaluation. All of it." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. "But you built it wrong." That finally pulled a reaction from him. A faint exhale. Not defensive. Not dismissive. Curious. Lily stepped forward slightly. Not toward him, but into her own space, claiming it. "You thought kindness could be measured by pressure. By hiding truth. By watching people when they don't know they're being watched." A pause. But real kindness doesn't survive control. It survives choice. Joel looked up at her words, as if something inside them made sense in a way he couldn't fully explain. Lily turned slightly, glancing at him, softening for just a moment. "I didn't help him because I was being tested," she said quietly. "I helped him because I chose to. And that should have been enough." Silence again. But this time it wasn't heavy. It was revealing. Brandon finally moved. He walked slowly toward the window, looking out at the skyline, like it might give him an answer he hadn't found in years. "I've built entire systems," he said at last, "to remove bias, to remove lies, to remove people pretending to be something they're not." His voice lowered, and I still couldn't figure out where truth begins. Lily didn't interrupt. She let him finish, because this wasn't a debate anymore. It was something else. Brandon turned slightly. "And what do you think I missed?" Lily didn't rush the answer. She looked at Joel first, then back at him. "You missed the fact that people aren't puzzles. A beat. They're not data points. They're not conditions. And they're definitely not something you control to see what's real." Her voice sharpened slightly, not in anger, but in truth finally being allowed to breathe. "You didn't discover my character." She stepped closer now, just enough that the space between them felt real. "You created a situation where I had to stay myself in spite of you." That hit differently. Even Joel noticed it. His eyes moved slowly between them, absorbing every word like it mattered more than anything he'd been taught in school. Brandon said nothing for a moment. Then quietly, "And Joel." Lily looked back at her son immediately. Joel straightened slightly, as if hearing his name in that tone made everything more serious. Brandon's gaze softened. Not strategic now. Not analytical. Just human. "I didn't expect him to connect with you the way he did," he admitted. Lily exhaled slowly. "That's because you were looking at outcomes," she replied. "Not people." A long silence followed. This time, no one tried to fill it. Because something had shifted. Not a victory. Not a loss. A recognition. Brandon turned back toward them slowly. "So what now?" he asked. And that question carried something different. No longer control. Just uncertainty. Lily looked at Joel again. Then at the man who had tried to define her through a test she never agreed to. And she said it. Calm. Clear. "Now I go back to who I was before all of this." A pause. "But I don't forget what I've seen." She took Joel's hand. Firm. Certain. "And if you ever want to understand people," she added, looking at Brandon one final time, "stop testing them like they're trying to pass you." A final silence. Then she turned and walked away. Not rushed. Not afraid. Not looking back. Joel followed without resistance, still glancing once over his shoulder. Not at the luxury, not at the power, but at the man standing alone in a room full of everything he built, realizing none of it could answer the question he was still chasing. Brandon Scott remained by the window long after they left. The city moved beneath him, but for the first time in years, he didn't feel like he understood it. And maybe that was the beginning of something he could no longer control. Outside, Lily Parker stepped into the ordinary noise of the city. But she didn't feel small anymore. She felt certain, because real power wasn't in being chosen. It was in choosing yourself. Hope you enjoyed watching. Comment which was your best part. Like and share the video. If you haven't watched the part 1 of the story, click on this video on your top right side to watch. Thank you so much and see you in our next story.